Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Thomas, what did you find today in the T-clearance tweet drop?
Oh my goodness, there's so much. I think we should just start at the top and go to the bottom and spilling the beans, lifting the veil, connecting to the universal rock.
Okay.
We are going to be, in a way, connecting back to that original composer who revealed the T, what the T stands for in Trump clearance, because Trump clearance is now, it's beyond Q clearance, It's one step beyond, because yes. Trump is the highest. He's got the highest clearance. And when I was in the NSA, I used to have a clearance that was called For the President's Eyes Only. And each day I'd get the Russian wrap-up, and I'd have to stamp it with this thing, For the President's Eyes Only. I was not supposed to read it. Hey, okay. Y'all, do you think I read it?
Okay.
Yeah, I read it. Okay. Oh, sorry.
All right, let's get going. All right, here's the first tweet. Let's see what you can tell me. Let's decode this.
Okay, wait. Let me get my crystal ball out, and let me get in the right mood. Okay.
You need
All
to
right.
Go flip some pancakes or anything?
Let me flip my pancakes, get my coffee, and let my dog out, then I'll be ready.
Okay.
Okay, I think I'm ready.
I asked Senator Chuck Schumer, why didn't President Obama and the Democrats do something about trade with China, including theft of intellectual property, etc.? They did nothing. With that being said, Chuck and I have long agreed on this issue, fair trade plus with China will happen. And before you start, folks, if you look into the description box on YouTube and if you open up that screen while we're talking, you'll be able to follow along with the tweets in the article. Okay, go ahead.
Now, common people might think that means he's saying something nice to Schumer. That's not what's going on. If you have T clearance like we do, T clearance, T and non-clearance, because we're anonymous patriots, so we have T clearance. Here's what he's really saying. Chuck, I remember when you supported the Clintons. I know you're part of their crimes, and that's what Walmart did, was rip off America through China because they got them approved through the World Trade Organization. I'm telling you right now, Schumer, if you want to stand against this, I'm just going to bring out your crimes, because you pocketed a tremendous amount of money by allowing America to go into hundreds of billions of dollars of debt in trade with China, and you sold us out, Chuck. You sold us out. Think back to the time when you controlled the whole ball of wax and you did nothing in any of these areas. So that's what he's saying. He's saying that his new trade deals, remember he went over and he did an $850 billion deal? None of that hardly panned out, because he basically said, look, I was baiting you, you silly Chinese. Remember how you always say yes to us and then act as if the answer was no? Notice how now China is attacking Bhutan. So they're building another road into Bhutan. They're going to do to Bhutan, this nation, just like they did to Tibet. And they'll do to Ladakh the same thing later on. They're going after the rare earth minerals. So don't believe a thing that China is saying. China is our enemy. China is running live weapons threats against Taiwan. We've been warning about this now for almost 2 years in our writings. And the real enemy is China. And what he's saying is, Chuck, you better get out of the way, and you better not stand in the way of the biggest deals going, because we're going to get deals for he'll say in a minute about the farmers, but we're going to get real deals, Chuck, not fake deals with Silicon Valley. Most of the $850 billion was with Silicon Valley. They all fell through exactly as we predicted they would. Now, the real deals are Broadcom didn't get Qualcomm. They didn't get 5G control over America. So he's saying to Schumer, I know you're the Chinese opposition here in America, along with McConnell. I know you guys are hand in glove. You guys are linked at the hip because you've been stealing.
Hello, the Department of Transportation Secretary is Mitchell's wife, who's Chinese and owns all of these Chinese shipping ships.
Yes. And it's getting worse by the day. There's more cronyism with Chinese. But in a way, Trump is doing this for a different reason than the true cronies are doing it. They're doing it for themselves and their greed. Trump's doing it because to control a power mechanism, you need power players until they are useless, and then they become basically they were useful idiots, as the Russians like to call many of the operatives they use.
Well, we need to move on.
Did I answer that one?
Yeah, I think so.
Did I get it right?
Okay, well, I don't know. We'd have to call up the D and ask him.
One thing I'm sure of, though, by that remark, I'm certain that the person who dropped that T clearance tweet drop is on the inside of the White House.
Okay, well, here's another inside. China has agreed to buy massive amounts of additional, that's highlighted, farm agriculture products, would be one of the best things to happen to our farmers in many years, followed by a tweet that's related on China, barriers and tariffs to come down for first time.
Okay, two parts to that. Remind me of the second part in a minute. Let me go off on the farm thing. The farm thing is the control mechanism for the Democrats right now because they love the farm bill that they want to pass. So Trump is basically saying, you don't need the farm bill and you don't need farm subsidies. I'm going to do this Chinese deal so that we don't have to pay subsidies anymore, so that farmers can grow all they want and they don't have to throw it down the drain, whether it be milk or burn it or just not grow it and leave their fields fallow, which is what most of the federal funds to the farm bill goes to leave fields fallow or to support GMOs and the stupid Monsanto, which is killing all of our animals, the environment, and our people. So what he's really saying there is a twofold thing. First thing is, what I have done, it's like the climate accord. I got us out of it. It saved us $5 trillion. I just got us out of not only, hundreds of billions of dollars in deficits, but now unlimited now, not just for big ag, but for farmers everywhere in America to basically find an endless place to sell their produce. You couldn't get any better news for the farm bill than that. What was the second part? This is the first time ever.
Barriers and tariffs to come down for first time.
Barriers, no one has ever broken down a barrier with the Chinese since what? One of the first emperors. They only expand. And South China Sea, Bhutan, Ladakh, I've just mentioned that. Tariffs? No. China always is one way. If you do any business like the car people around here in this area do in China, yeah, they're going to tell you they'll let you build one of your car manufacturing plants there, but they're going to own more than half of it, and they're going to control it. And in the end, it's going to be completely Chinese, and they'll even turn your executives into Chinese executives, because that's what China's always done. They absorb and they conquer, and that's what they're doing with everything, and that's what they tried to do with America. We actually were sold out by the Clintons to become nothing more than the consumers for what was being made mostly on Taiwan. And that's the reason mainland China wants Taiwan, because they basically were providing us 51% of our manufactured goods in our common household products. They were controlling us. And who was getting a dime? Who was getting their dime on every dollar? That would be Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, because they were on the board of course, the Walton family.
Okay, let's look at the next post.
Sorry.
China must continue to be strong and tight on the border of North Korea until a deal is made. The word is that recently the border has become much more porous and more has been filtering in. I want this to happen and North Korea to be very successful, but only after signing.
Now, what I'm about to tell you is not from the conclave. This is a direct channeling from a T clearance person. That is myself,
we
Thomas.
Didn't ask the conclave to join us in these
this
T
is strictly,
stuff.
We are channeling this, and we can tell you that one thing is for sure. We're going to tell you things nobody else is going to tell you when we're doing these T drops, because the T drops are where it's at. We have never done this before because we didn't want to give away, but now it doesn't matter. He's winning. The tide has turned. Critical mass has been reached, and the deep state, the shadow government's going down. So here's what I told you all from the beginning. Go back to the tapes. Crazy Thomas Paine in the ass of the globalists told you that the Chinese are stealing rare earth minerals out of North Korea. This has been going on for some time. This was how they then cheated on the sanctions, and how they then snuck things into North Korea without looking like they were North Korea's friends. But they didn't help them with anything nuclear. That was the Russians and the Americans. So we got ourselves into those messes. But they didn't want this to be revealed. And we know this because the porous border is the porous border between, we found this out with the Chinese cyber hacking when it was right on the border of North Korea. They would blame it on North Korea attributes. Nonsense. It was the Chinese. So that border has been porous for a long time, and people have been pouring across back and forth. Remember, before Kim Jong-un was going to meet with hardly anybody, who'd he meet with? The premier of China. I like to call him Dictator Xi, because he is a dictator, and he's going to be the worst one in history, mark my words. and I've been saying this for quite some time, the one road, one belt, the fake gold, all this, the attacks on our currency, both with fake gold, yuan, all this, it's all evil. It's all horrible. And Trump is doing a great job. So what he just did with North Korea is he said, stop it now. Stop your theft in North Korea, China. Abide by what you say to us in public and stop. I catch you lying all the time and I call you out on it. And I'm going to call you a liar every time you lie. He called them out when they broke the sanctions against North Korea that the UN put on 9 times in a row and denied it all. And in the Security Council tried to justify it, saying they didn't do it. Then when they were caught, blah, blah, blah. So Trump is winning against China. No one has ever broken down one of their borders. No one has ever won against them in a tariff war or any kind of trade war. No one has ever won against the Chinese. We are winning against the Chinese. And I could predict some other things that are going to happen, but I'm not going to because they're actually too big. They're concerning Taiwan and Ladakh and Bhutan and India. But I don't want to scare people. But Trump is going to squelch those also.
Okay. Now, the next is a quote. And so it's rather lengthy. So it's from Don Bongino. And so he's got this, and it's in 3 separate tweets. And I don't think there's anything curious about that. I think it only holds so many characters, so it moves to the next line.
So it's not a clue, a puzzle, a mystery.
Sometimes you can't assume that people know how these tweets work.
It's okay.
John Brennan is panicking. He has disgraced himself. He has disgraced the country. He has disgraced the entire intelligence community. He is the one man who is largely responsible for the destruction of America's faith in the intelligence community and in some people at the top of the FBI. Brennan started this entire debacle about President Trump. We now know that Brennan had detailed knowledge of the phony dossier. He knows about the dossier. He denies knowledge of the dossier. He briefs the Gang of 8 on the Hill about the dossier, which they then used to start an investigation about Trump. It's that simple. This guy is the genesis of this whole debacle. This was a political hit job. This was not an intelligence investigation. Brennan has disgraced himself. He's worried about staying out of jail. Don Bongino.
Amen. Trump loves to print those things of people who say exactly what he knows and is thinking, and that's what he just did. And just we'll add to this, because we were the first ones to say Brennan was the source of the Papadopoulos counterintelligence investigation. But now we know that he's the one who set up Mifsud, Professor Joseph Mifsud, and his, I just love it, the Russian Institute of International Affairs. And remember, Mifsud set up George Papadopoulos to have an affair with Putin's niece. So I just laugh because that was a CIA operation. And it led then to Mifsud connecting him to Alexander Downer, another international operation. The FBI wouldn't have had any jurisdiction. And then Alexander led him to Stephen Halper, who is a CIA agent. Oh, that's right. Brennan paid him for studies in sociology and the humanities. $400,000, we are told by one source, if it's true. $400,000 was paid by Brennan to Stephen Halper to set up, to frame Carter Page, because Comey was working on the Carter Page dossier that was going to be the FBI's counterintelligence attack against Trump, while Brennan was working on the George Papadopoulos counterintelligence attack on Trump. But Brennan used a number of people. He used Sergei Milian, who we talk about all the time, Sergei Milian Parachenko, who is an international spy. He used Stephen Halper, who owns 3 banks, who have all laundered money for the Iran-Contra affair, for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce bringing in money from foreign governments. So it was truly exactly as that person just stated. It was John Brennan, who did not trust Comey because he didn't think he was intelligent enough to pull off what he was attempting to do because he couldn't get his FISA warrants together with Carter Page. And boy, I tell you, it didn't take John Brennan a second to get his FISA warrant together for George Papadopoulos, which no one has even questioned to this very day except us. And, well, now it's coming out that there must be one, and so a few people are questioning that. But there was also one on Michael Flynn, which Brennan started. And there was also one that we know of that we told everyone about a long time ago, that the CIA had a FISA warrant on Paul Manafort and his partner Rick Gates. This is well known. Goes back for years and years and years and years. And so what is stated there is true. It doesn't even need translating, but we just add a little bit to it. So that T drop was rather transparent.
Okay.
T for transparent.
Okay, I only have one more. The last one on the page was a reference again to American farmers in China, and I think you pretty well covered it. So let's make this one the last analysis of the video. Trump tweets, and I believe that is the original Trump because I see a circle with a check mark, so that says these are tweets that are coming from him. Okay. The Wall Street Journal asked, quote, "Where in the world was Barack Obama?" Close quote. A very good question. I would like to say, well, he was sitting there with the U.S. Digital Service and Eric Schmidt and Hillary Clinton in the White House with other people that we've had pictured before, working on actually rigging the election with this man in the middle thing. So we have pointed out a long time that literally Obama was rigging the elections, but that was my thought. That was Betsy's thought.
So, were you in a trance when you translated that, or you were like just?
No, I was like totally here.
Streaming, or just
No.
completely conscious?
No, but I did the research with the conclave, and we saw how Facebook and all of them meddled in. Not meddled. That's a light word. These people actually rigged the election. And then when you look at the scope of this, all the intelligence agencies and Brennan and Clapper and Rice and Jarrett and all of them and the whole system in the world, and we're going to track it back to the Brits. I'm sorry, I love the British people, but they've got a problem too in their spying agencies and intelligence agencies. But nevertheless, all of that, and Hillary Clinton lost. And I keep bringing this up because this is how powerful we are, people, fellow patriots. We got out there and we upset their apple cart so badly. And 4 years later, we're going to be so much more knowledgeable on how to manipulate the internet the way we do so well that our guy will get in the office again. So go ahead now.
The shortest T drop here today is going to require the greatest amount of explanation. Sorry. It quoted the Wall Street Journal. Now, nobody seems, except one article today, we kept saying, where does this come from? What caused the critical mass? What caused this to hit the fan? It's now out, and they named the person, a woman who writes for the Wall Street Journal. Thought for a second with this phrase that was released by Glenn Simpson's behind closed doors congressional testimony that was released kind of somewhat inappropriately by Dianne Feinstein as she jumped off of that committee and jumped onto the Judiciary Committee to protect herself because Mark Warner was already trying to reach Christopher Steele. So the entire Senate Intelligence Committee is completely compromised. That's why they're doing nothing. But what they did release is this one little phrase. Well, no, the Wall Street Journal writer focused in on one phrase of Glenn Simpson's. That Glenn says, in trying to defend himself, that he didn't just make up the whole dossier and that it wasn't just propaganda. He says, no, absolutely not. There was corroboration going on at the time between us and the person who had been, I forget the exact word, placed in the Trump campaign. In other words, that's where they get this concept of the mole, the infiltrated, the spy. And so they say let me break it down to this. Glenn Simpson said that the information in the dossier had been verified by someone who was already working on the inside of the Trump camp. Okay? That person was Stephen Halper. Now, when it came out that in the unredacted FISA information that they're still not giving to the Congress, the redacted forms have this person's name marked out, and the name is, everyone speculates, is Stephen Halper. And when you look closely, you'll see why that's probably true. So then when that got picked up by the Daily Caller, and then it got picked up by New York Times and got picked up by Washington Post. Now everyone's all over it. And they're all saying, yeah, this guy's a spy. No, he's not a spy. He's not a mole. He's not an informant. He is a framer. He is running a counterintelligence framing operation to frame all of those people that we mentioned. Carter Page, George Papadopoulos, Michael Flynn, his friend, who he worked with, and Paul Manafort, a person that he knew many years ago that he worked with, and Rick Gates. Now, Stephen Halper has been involved in so much crookedness that I can't name it all, but since the time of Nixon, he's been involved in crooked money for elections. And his company, the company he's very strongly connected to, Strategic Communications Laboratories, which is the mother company of Cambridge Analytica, which is in the news now, they're going down because they basically do election rigging, not only through the internet, but by bribery and sex scandals. So Stephen Halper's expertise is election rigging through bribery and sex scandals. Does any of this ring a bell?
Well,
Trump was being bribed by supposedly the Russians through Alpha Bank, and he had these sex scandals, which none of them happened.
okay. I don't want to go too far down that road because I know that you guys have been doing some amazing research on the situation. We're going to do a separate audio on that following this one.
Second part of that question.
Yes. Okay.
What was it?
Where in the world was Barack Obama?
Barack Obama ordered the whole thing. And we now know this because Valerie Newland is the source. Victoria.
Newland.
Sorry.
Right.
Sorry. I think of Valerie Jarrett. And I think of Victoria Newland, okay? Victoria Newland supposedly picked up a telephone conversation from Europe that somehow said Trump was compromised. That's how all this started. Victoria Newland, who do you think she told? John Kerry. And the nature of what she told him, and we know this because Jonathan Weiner has spilt the beans on all of this. So John Kerry, of course, at the State Department, worked then with Bill Orr. We know this.
Bruce Orr.
Bill Orr. Bruce Orr and his wife, Nellie. When you mix Bruce and Nellie, you get Bill or something. Anyway, Bruce Orr and Nellie Orr, Nellie who quit working for, I believe it was the CIA or FBI, so she could go work for Fusion GPS.
But she's probably still getting paid a fat salary from Senior Executive Service. You know, they pay their people even when they leave.
Bruce Orr, Senior Executive Service,
Yeah.
he's one of the 500 lawyers who determined how much they're going to continue to pay Andrew McCabe.
Yeah.
Because he probably will not
I always just
be.
like to remind people that we're still looking at Senior Executive Service, so continue.
It is an also Circle month.
Mm-hmm.
So Barack Obama was given, he was completely complicit in the whole thing. Remember, Susan Rice trying to get herself out with the alibi, writing after the inauguration. I sat in the meeting with Joe Biden, with the intelligence directors, with Obama, myself, and he said, I want you to play this one by the book completely, keep me completely posted. He was completely aware of it. We have Page instructs text messages saying that the president is demanding to be completely kept abreast of this situation. We have it again and again and again that Barack Obama was completely complicit. He completely knew. He ran the operation directly out of the White House, which was called the U.S. Digital Service, which was the template to win the election for Hillary Clinton. He was 100%
Thank you,
complicit.
Eric Schmidt, for using Google for that.
Thank you, Eric
Schmidt. Mark Zuckerberg for your Facebook input on that.
Which was tremendous. They changed all the algorithms. They changed everything for Hillary. And we still want to play a game like Hillary didn't use Fusion GPS for illegally using British agents. Now, let me underscore this. Obama knew when he invited the head of the British NSA over to meet John Brennan at Fort Meade, where then he conducted a wiretap on Donald Jr. meeting Natalia Veselnitskaya. We know the State Department was involved to allow her and her Russian spies to enter the country.
Oh yeah, that's Loretta Lynch. She let that happen.
That's where I'm going. And she cannot get out of this because she ran away. Not only the tarmac meeting and the email what did she call it? Matter,
The
instead
Matter,
of
yes.
the largest, second largest espionage investigation in U.S. history.
Well, what
which
was the first?
That will be Imran Awan.
Oh, okay.
And that's already been proven by the Congressional Office of Inspector General has said that he's committed the biggest crimes in U.S. espionage history. So Barack Obama was completely complicit. We know that because of those meetings. We know it because of the things that he said during it. We know it because he ran the whole nonsense about 17 intelligence agencies all said this. We know that he lied about Russian interference. We know he did nothing about Russian interference. We know that he paid for that Russian interference. He paid the Global Engagement Center $86 million that year to run the Russian interference and the Russian meddling into the campaign. It was all done out of the Global Engagement Center. We know that it was Dmitry did I miss his name? Dmitry Shovalenko, whatever his name was, who was hired by Facebook, the Russian who in India wrote the program which was used by Facebook to make sure Hillary came up positive and Trump came up negative. These are all facts, folks. We've presented all of them to you. Obama was 100% complicit. So be careful when you read these. This is the real news, but if you don't know what Trump is really saying, you don't know that he's laughing quite often when he is sending out these messages, because they are not only double entendres, they're triple, quadruple.
Well, he talks like really tight. He has tight thinking and tight writing. And so he puts a lot in the little words. And then it takes a specialist like you to decode it.
Well, we didn't want to decode it because we're using the art of the deal. But it just... I don't want people to go over to 4chan and over to 8chan and look at nonsense and hang out in a limited hangout that takes up all your time looking up old news. Work with new news. The new news are Trump drops, Trump tweets, the T clearance tweet bombs, and we're going to translate them for you to make them even more interesting.